Welcome to A Mile Deep. And today I have the pleasure of going a mile deep with Hina Khan.
I'm so happy to
Welcome.
be here.
Yes,
Let's just get right into it, Ben. Come on.
yeah,
No
yeah.
lengthy intro here.
You don't need an intro. What I love about this is, getting to speak to Hina and going a mile deep is that there's so many things that I've learned from being shoulder to shoulder with Hina, working in a business, working with her clients. It's been an honor to work beside you, but the biggest honor is watching how you go a mile deep with clients and watching how you embody the work that you do. I just want to acknowledge that, Hina. And I remember we were sat in Canada, so Hina invited me over to this year, and we were sat overlooking a lake. And I said, "Go on, Hina. What is it that you've noticed in the great mentors and the great people that you've worked with? What's the thing that make someone just so incredible and special and create lots of success?" And it's like there's just no gap. There was no gap between what they said and what they did, and that really, really resonated and struck me and sat with me. And watching and being part of the community is like, this is what you do. And in today's Mile Deep podcast, what I'd love to get under the hood of is just getting really where did this come from? Because this is it's an amazing experience to see so many women seeing this same change and watching the influence that you have and have created. So welcome on the podcast. And yeah, I am excited to do this one.
That's perfect, Ben. It's so interesting. Where did this come from? And I know we're going to go through the journey of it. But I think first and foremost, what you see in our clients that you work with as well is that I have done what I'm asking them to do. So that is the congruence piece as well, is that I have walked in their shoes. It may have looked a little bit different, but the same process that I have used to create a life that I love is the exact same process that I invite all of my clients to use.
Yeah. And you can see that. I think that's is when you've had someone walk a mile in your shoes and they can give you a strong, not just empathetic bit of guidance, but they really know what you're experiencing, especially from coaching as well. And there's something that I really, really observed, and you talk about this a lot, and I didn't really understand this as much until I, observed it in what you do is identity.
Mm-hmm.
When we were talking before, you just mentioned how identity is everything, and it's something that you really, really help people transform. And tell me, what was your practice? What were you like before you discovered that?
So my identity was really shaped in being a psychotherapist, seeing clients one-on-one, exchanging time for money. And that was the paradigm of the psychotherapy industry in Canada and in Ontario where I was. And so I knew, Ben, that I desired more and I knew I wanted to make a bigger impact, but I didn't know how I could do it in that model. But also, my identity was very tied to being a psychotherapist. I invested thousands and thousands of dollars into my education. I was very good. And I loved it. I loved helping people. It was just that something has shifted and I had outgrown the model of it. But I didn't know, I didn't even know I had outgrown the model. I just knew I knew something wasn't sitting right with me anymore. But it's our identity that can keep us where we're at. So for many years, I was like, okay, let me see, how can I make this work? And then I started to look at coaching, and then I had judgments about coaching, especially coming from psychotherapy. You're smiling as I say that. But, we're here to be honest. And it's like,
Yeah.
but I'm a psychotherapist, right? And I feel like that has credibility, and anybody can be a coach. Anybody can call themselves a coach. It's, after a weekend, they're a coach, a weekend of training. And so, but that was my judgment. That wasn't the truth. It was a judgment that I had on an industry, and that judgment was on ignorance. I didn't really understand it. And that judgment. Now, I could be tied to my identity as a psychotherapist, and that's great. Then I can go the rest of my life trading time for money. Like, is that serving me? And I can feel righteous in my judgments. Like, that's great as I'm trading time for money and it's not really a fit for me and my family anymore, but I can feel really righteous and morally superior. Like, at least I've got
Mm.
that. Because this is what we do. And so when I just thought about, but like, what do I want? And this was a question that I had to really ask myself: what do I want? And this is where we have to start to change our identity. But it was a process. So what I realized was, what do I want? I want to make a bigger impact. I want to be
Mm.
able to help more people. And I want to be able to do it in a way where I'm compensated that supports my lifestyle. And in the model of psychotherapy, the way that it was, I could not see it. In the model of coaching, I could see the possibility of it. So I had to look for people that were doing what I wanted to do. And I found it in the coaching world. And I found it specifically with my mentor, Bob Proctor. And so here's what's interesting, because I'm coming with all of this, like, I've got this education and all of that. He has 1 month of high school. He has 1 month of high school, but he has the results I want. So I just kind of need to check myself and get past myself in that moment, because he has a way, he's clearly doing something right. And so sometimes our self-worth and our identity won't even allow us to see what's right in front of us as an opportunity. I am happy that for me, I was able to see that opportunity. I had a little bit of sense at that time to say, look, your way is not working for what you want. So here's somebody, 1 month high school education, but his way is working and he has the results that you want.
Oh wow, that's like yeah. Because even recently, I had that moment, that epiphany. Like I was the feeling I was feeling as I'm trying so hard, and I'm just not getting the results that I feel I'm capable of creating. And it was really interesting actually, and there's something that you said there was really important. It's like I really needed to know what I wanted, and I think that's what we're talking about, going a mile deep, but in the context of what I help a lot of people with, it's getting really, like, getting a really clear vision, and it's the first step. But like, my opinion is the first step in going 10x, the first thing in changing your life is getting clear on what you want. How did you do that? Like, how did you, like, was it like a process? Did you go on a retreat? Was there like a moment? What was the moment for you?
I think it starts with telling yourself the truth. And that can be a part of self discovery, because many times we don't know what we want because we have this belief that to want is bad. Perhaps we were brought up with, you shouldn't want, you should be happy with what you have. And there can be a misunderstanding that if you want more, you're not grateful. So those were things that I had to work through. Again, it was judgments that I had, like, you know, gosh, to want more is to be greedy, and not really understanding that actually it's inherent in our nature to desire more, because that's what expands the whole universe. And we see that in nature, and it is within us as well. And we are goal seeking organisms. The question is, are we seeking our goals, what we want? Are we seeking goals that we think somebody else wants, that has told us that we should want? Are we seeking the goals that we think that is in this age and stage of my life, society is telling me that this is a goal I should have? So the first thing is, we've got to strip everything away, and you've got to allow yourself to stretch your thinking. And so one thing that I take my clients through is this process called the 50 wants list. And it's 50 things that you want, that you write down, that money can buy. Right then and there, people have some resistance to it. And all of your judgments are going to come up because they feel like they're being superficial, materialistic. But that's the whole point. That's the whole point of the goal, is for you to tap into what would you love. And it requires money. It requires money. And some people can get to 20, some people can get to 10. I've had people that it's taken 3 weeks to do. When I first sat down with somebody and they asked, "What do you want?" I was in my psychotherapy practice, Ben, and I said, "I want I'm making probably about 80,000 a year and I want to get to 120."
Mm.
And they said, "Okay." They could feel that for me that was a stretch. That was a stretch goal. Now that's monthly, but I quite like if you had said to me, "Hannah, you're going to be doing that's going to be monthly for you." I would have been like, I actually do not understand that. Like I literally do not understand the words that are coming out of your mouth because I would be going to how. And at that time, when I was even looking at 80 to 120 and I'm in the psychotherapy model, I'm thinking, okay, so that just means I have to work more. I have to see more clients. And so a big thing is to, when you're thinking about what you want, is to let go of the how, because the how will automatically bring down what you want. So if I was with somebody that could help me hold the vision of, okay, but what would it be like to hit six figures? Because if I was by myself, Ben, I would have been like, okay, but how? That means I have to see more people. I don't want to do that. So let me bring down my goal. So I would bring down my goal to my level of identity. I would bring down my goal to the level of my awareness. And my awareness was, this is how we make money. That feels hard. So I've got to bring my goal down. And then I would start to talk myself out of the 120 and I would talk myself into maybe 90, because maybe that doesn't feel like I would have to do too much different and I could handle that kind of how. So when you're thinking about what you want, there's a few key things here. One is to put yourself in an environment that stretches your imagination, and that could be the 50 want list. And then while you're doing that, anytime the how comes up, to remind yourself that in this moment, the how is none of your business.
Yeah, I think I heard that from you when I first came in your world and saw. I remember like being on one of your calls and listening, and he's like, "This is none of your business." And there was two things you said on that call. It was like, "How is none of your business?" And then doubt is the devil. It's just like I remember like these, and I remember I was like, "Oh, that's so profound." And um, what's amazing is that like when you look at what you do with like yourself and all your clients, I could see that in the sport world. I could see that in the performance physiology world. Like a lot of the things that you talk about, even that one of the things I've learned a lot from you is that this thing about space, like creating space, joy, fun, ease, space. And I think that sometimes people see that message and they think it's like, oh, it's all going to be flowy and easy, and there's no graft. And actually, what I see is like there's work, but there's also a lot of space to grow from that work. And this is what I can see not just in you, Hina, but in the clients that you work with. They work hard, like in
Yeah.
terms of they put in the thinking time, the effort, but they create space, and that growth, that recipe for growth, like stretch plus rest equals growth. And it's like I could see that. And so what was the moment that you shifted from this kind of like working hard psychotherapy model to saying, well, actually, do you know what? I'm going to start creating my life differently, like with ease, fun, and space. Like, what would be like? Can you remember when you just made that decision?
Oh, that has been an evolution for me. And again, you talked about my mentors, and what it is that I noticed in them is that they were very congruent, and they were what we call like living the material. They're not just saying it and living it. And I always would pay for proximity. And
Mm.
because I wanted to be in the energy of my mentors and see them like in ways that are not just on stage or listening to them, but how are they really? And what I could see is that they were never frazzled. They were never running around confused or busy. They wouldn't even use that language. So, being in proximity, I could also hear the language in which they talked, and they were very focused. So, the way that once you know what you want, the way that you can start to bring in ease, flow, and joy into the creation and unfoldment of it is understanding some universal law principles. So this really helped me. So, for example, if we have a seed, and if we think of the seed as an idea, and so we've got the idea, which is a seed, and now think of an apple seed. For both to grow, they've got to be planted. Our idea seed is planted in the fertile soil of our mind. The apple seed is planted underground. And then what is happening underground is it's taking form, the roots, it's drawing in from the soil all the nutrients it needs. So much growth is happening in the dark. And this is also the case with our ideas. It's in our fertile mind, the soil of our mind. We're not seeing it, but growth is happening. We are forming it in our mind, and it's moving from no thing into something. And it's understanding these principles that can allow you to relax and can allow you, when you're like, I don't see anything happening, I don't see it, to remind yourself that growth happens in the dark. Babies in the dark, nature in the dark. And anytime, the equivalent of digging up with our doubts is going to that apple seed and saying, I don't see it, and digging it up. Right?
I
So this
was
is
gonna ask
why,
you to. Someone said,
yeah,
one of the ladies said this to me the other day. She's like, "It's like what Hina talks about, digging up your seed," and I was like, "I've got to ask you about that." It's just like,
there you go. So we're
yeah,
digging up the seed. And what are we doing, Ben? We're interrupting the growth. We're
mm,
interrupting the growth, and we're taking apart what we've done. And this is what I see, and you've seen it in peak performance, in your work as well, is that this is start and stop. Start is I've planted it. Stop is I've digged it up with doubt. I've digged it up with fear. Now I'm going to plant it again, fear, or we just decide it's not for me. I guess it's not for me. But we haven't given, because we don't understand. It's just a lack of understanding. I'm not saying to have blind faith. I'm saying to have faith based on understanding. This is so the manifestation of the apple. The apple doesn't even look like an apple until the very last part of the journey. It looks like a little like seedling, a sprout, then a tree, then flowers on a tree, and then the apple. So many times we're thinking that our goal is not happening because we're not seeing it in the exact form, but it is. And so this is understanding these principles and working in harmony with these principles, just like the farmer works in harmony with the land, works in harmony with the laws of nature. We have aviation because of the Wright brothers working in harmony with the law of gravity. So working
yeah,
in harmony with these laws is what allows me to relax and to know that listen, doing matters. You've got to pick up the phone and phone people. You've got to, like, if you've got a restaurant or a bricks and mortar business, you want a sign that says open. You want to have the door open so people know that you're open for business. And it can be done in a way that you truly are working smarter by using your higher faculties, such as imagination, such as the will, and understanding the laws to bring it into form. Now, is this easy? No. Is it simple? Yes. Why is it not easy? Because of all of our chatter in our mind,
mm.
because of comparison that we do. It is so the discipline here is the discipline of your thought. While you're not seeing anything, can you hold the vision? Can you act as if? Can you live in the law of assumption that it is here? It is simply in a different form. That is what I would say is the hard work, and that is the struggle.
Oh my gosh, that's so good, and that's what I loved about your coaching, is that your understanding of these universal laws. I'm like talking about something. So when Hina and I have been coaching together, I'll talk about something, and Hina will go, "Yeah, that's the law of this." It's just like, it's kind of a beautiful synchronicity, because there is so many, like, this is something I came from like a physiology background, studying performance in a physiological manner, and then you've come at it purely from like a psychological manner, and it's like it's the same laws, it's the same processes. And I'm like, every time when we've been coaching or I've seen you coach, it's like, oh my gosh, these are exactly the same principles. And watching them, it's like conscious competence as well. It's like, oh my gosh, and fully understanding what is going on. And I think that when somebody sees, oh, it's just the law of opposites, or the law of, and then they get that, it's like, oh, I think that gives them so much reassurance. And I think this is like what I was saying, this might sound a bit messy, because when people are going through that process of not understanding the change, sometimes you're the light in the dark that says, hey, by the way, this is just what's happening. I can see it. This is the law of opposite. This is the law of this. And I think that's what I've seen to be so effective about what you do. And the big piece for me, and this was for me as well, is identity. Like, so tell me more about identity, and when you started to realize, not just for yourself, but for helping people transform, that it was such a vital component of personal transformation.
I think this has been the piece that has been missing. And I can see why people, including myself in the past, have been so frustrated, because you create a goal, you desire that goal, and you truly, really, really want it. You absolutely do. And it feels hard, and it feels like you get to a certain point and then it doesn't look like it's working, and it's a cycle that's very, very frustrating. And the missing piece is because people haven't been talking about the self-image part of it that has to be a match to it. So for example, on my morning call, I do morning rise calls. A new client that just joined had said that she's raising her prices. So that's amazing. Absolutely beautiful. But if she doesn't raise her self-image, she's going to see evidence that this is not working, and that she's getting feedback from the environment saying, no, you should lower your prices. So because her current result, which is what is in her bank account based on what clients have paid her, is a reflection of her past
Mm.
thoughts, feelings, and actions. So the results, your current results, are your past. Now, if she doesn't change that identity that created that current result, and she's creating a new goal, she's going to fall back to that set point. So our
Mm.
identity, we have set points for our health, for our relationships, for our finances, for every area of our life. And if we do not change our self-image along the way, and I would say that's like most of it, most of the work, then we're going to fall to whatever our set point is. And we won't even realize it. This is all happening unconsciously. It's all happening unconsciously. And so even for me to go, like when I think of like 80,000 to 120,000 a year, that was a different identity. 120,000 a year to that a month, that's a different identity. And so it's so I was saying, we were doing an event and I was like, there is so much murder that has happened because you are constantly killing off old identities. And the thing is, Ben, is you're killing off things that worked. Like that is
Yeah.
what's so
Yeah.
scary. And you're killing off things that work and that but you've got to, just like if you wanted to change the temperature in your home, you would go and change the thermostat setting. You've
Mm.
got to do that. And so your thermostat setting are your thoughts, feelings, or actions. It's your standards and your stories. What are the standards of this person that charges this much? And this is what I've asked her to do. I've said, I want you to create the identity of this version of you. Now, what happens is sometimes there's a lag. There's a lag in that. So you do this, you create the identity, but you're still receiving, let's say, clients that are like, as you said, the law of opposites, giving you pushback or challenges. And but you're not quite at the new place either. You don't have a ton of clients at the new price. So that's where you've got to, can you have the discipline of thought? Can you hold the
Mm.
vision and know that that other price doesn't exist anymore? Like it simply does not exist. And that is the piece of identity. So then you have to start to act from your identity. So, what are your stories? What are your standards? What are the habits of the person that is charging that much? And you've got to do from that place of being.
So much
So,
to So much to
Yeah,
talk
there's
about.
so much. Like even when I had changed an identity, I remember that I no longer do discovery calls. So I remember changing this and saying I don't do them. And recently, I had somebody reach out for one-on-one coaching with me. No, she was interested in my coaching programs and was wondering if I did one-on-one. So I said, absolutely. I said, what I'll do is here's what we can do. I will connect you to Mario on my team, and then he can have a conversation with you. And then if it feels right, we'll go from there. And she had said, oh, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a really personal approach. So I don't think we're a good fit. Now, a past version of me would have been like, oh, no, no, I can for sure get on a call with you. No, but I don't get on calls with people. It's just not part of my identity now where I'm at. And so I actually suggested somebody who we know, who we both coach. I was like, you know what? I actually think this person would be the perfect fit for you. Um, and this is probably what she's looking for. And so I sent her that person's information. And I said, this is the
Yeah.
person that's going to be the right fit for you, because I still want to leave everyone with the impression of increase. I still want to help. So it's not like, okay, well, no, too bad. But I'm not going to lower my standard for
Wow.
myself to say because I have to get a client. Because in my identity, I don't need clients. So your doing is coming from who you're being. But that's where you've got to have the congruency. And listen, this is this is still an ongoing process with me. So it's not like I've got it down, but it's always ongoing.
Yeah, I don't think it ever becomes a process where it's non-existent. I think what happens is the time at which you recalibrate it can like come up where you'll want
Yes.
to do something. But I think the win in personal transformation is acknowledging like, oh, this is my default, but I can quickly, consciously make a better decision within a couple of milliseconds, seconds, minutes, hours. And I think that's something that I notice with clients is that when I hear that they've really transformed, something that they would struggle with for days, weeks, months. Now I was like, oh, by the way, I kind of had a reframe on that within a couple of seconds, and that I think is the goal. And I think for someone listening, and they think you'll listen to Hina maybe or me, and you think, oh, she will never struggle with this. She sounds so confident. And actually, it's just like it isn't. It's a human experience to want to maybe like a conditioning based response of, oh yeah, I'll serve this client in a certain way like I used to. But I think the real big win in personal transformation is slowing down, having the space, and to be able to say, no, that's my default, but this is my designed response. And I like this like distinction that Dusan talks about. It's like the default versus designed future. Like my default future is the future I'm going to have if I just live by my responses and reactions currently. My designed future is this one where I choose and design. And this is what actually, and this is something that I've been reading a lot about recently, is like future self, future identity. And it's this idea of vividness, like really getting clear. And I think Hin is a master at this, is you really go into detail. Like you go into so much detail about not just the vividness of people's goals, but, and I think there's a really important distinction here. The vividness, like creating a really clear image, not the how, but the image, you're very, very, very vivid on that. And the identity. And this is what I'm seeing is like, it's all well and good having the clear goal, but you do the both, which is the identity and the goal.
Oh
And
my gosh, Ben, it's so important because, I had somebody else that just joined our program and she had said she had great results with another coach. Where there was the gap for her, so she had a goal of making a certain amount of money, 80,000 a month, and she did that. But where was the gap for her was having it, because she had the identity that she could receive it, but she couldn't have it. So that's why this is all ongoing. And so we're working on her identity as somebody that can receive and have and be so supported and not have to be in this up and down, um, you know, uh, cycle that she has been in, not to have, not to. So she had the identity before of, yes, I can receive it, But in order for me to even excel and do better, I've got to kind of be back at zero, right? It's kind of
Oh
the
wow,
people
yeah.
with the credit card, right? Like it's like they can clear it. They get to a point where they're like, this is not, I'm not available for this anymore. It must be cleared. And they figure it out and they can clear it. And they're like, never again. And then it's again. And it is
Mm.
simply it is their identity. It's their set point. And it's because we don't get what we want. We get how we feel about what we want. And so this is why there's been so much frustration, because people think, because they consciously do want something different, but because they haven't changed things at the subconscious level with how they feel about it, they are not able to then, so they want it, but because they haven't changed how they feel about it, they're still acting from the past self. They're not, their actions are not based in their future self. And what they're waiting for is, when it changes on the outside, then I will change. This is the when then conundrum. It's like, well, when this happens, then I will do that. When I see this, then I will be like that. But it just doesn't work that way. When you're working with universal laws and in harmony with the laws, you understand that you must be first, then you're doing from that place of being, and then you will have.
Yeah. You know what I used to have on my training top? It's like, do to be, not be to do. For years, that was it was on my back of my training top. And I was like, as you were saying that, I was like, oh, how wrong was I? I was right at the time for me. It was like, no, you do to be, but it's, I look back and I'm like, no, it's be to do. It's so funny. But even what you were sharing there, one of the best parts of having a coach, if you were to hire a coach in a sporting sense, or is consistent performance. It's not about the athlete that can go out there and run once a year really well. If you want to win a league, a table, a medal, or an Olympics, it's like consistently being able to be at the top of your performance. And what I loved about what you shared there, and is like, this lady had done an 80,000. She'd had that 1 month, flash in the pan, but it's like so many people experience. They have that, what I call a zigzag experience, where they have the success, they don't want to solve the next problem, and then they cannibalize all their success. And so many people who have come to me, maybe and to you too, they have this like boom or bust lifestyle. They have a
Right.
great month followed by a terrible month. I can recognize it in myself, and it's like they don't solve the next problem. And I think what you've answered there, is it because of their identity, right? So
It
if they're
is.
listening to this,
Yeah, it is, Ben. And so, two things I want to say, one is about the rest piece in this, and the other is around lottery winners. So I'll start with lottery winners, because that's what you're speaking of. The majority of lottery winners, they go back to their set point within a year or 2 years of winning millions, right? That you could be like, my gosh, you don't even have enough life to spend it all. And they will, because they don't have the consciousness of wealth. So they've got a poverty consciousness. They were able to receive it, but they can't hold on to it because it doesn't feel comfortable actually to hold on to. And you'll even hear lottery winners saying, I wish I had never won it. Because they don't have the consciousness of it, it was very problematic. How do you hold on to this much wealth, or have this much wealth, with a poverty mindset, with a mindset that maybe feels that rich people are greedy, with a mindset that feels that money is the root of all evil, with a mindset that feels that money brings you problems? So you're going to go back to your identity. And speaking of what you were talking about in the training world, in the physical training world, if we look at a coach that is helping a client reach some sort of physical milestone, whether it's like bodybuilding, a marathon, or anything, you are going to make rest part of the strategy. So rest is when your muscles are growing, right? Rest is when there's repair to then build on to the next part of the performance. You need that rest. So when we're talking about self identity and creating through ease, joy, and fun and flow, it's you've got to make rest part of your strategy, but that this is a sound business decision.
mm.
And this is part of the consciousness that you want to create.
It's quite funny. It's like when you say to someone, "Hey, a sound business decision is to invest in rest." I think so many of my past clients have looked at me as if to say, "WTF?" Like, are you serious? And they don't get that, and that's something I can see. Like, even when I came to the Inner Circle retreat and the
Mhm.
spaciousness where we did a lot of the planning, there's just something about going to places like that. And I've made all of my best decisions on retreats. And actually, I'll tell you a little quick story if you're listening. So Hina invited me on her retreat, her Arizona retreat. And even the story, I'll tell it again because I think it's so valuable.
Mhm.
I went and I wanted to go, but I was looking for reasons to not go because of fear. And I was like, it's across the world. It's like I live in Dubai. It's in Arizona. It's like 40 hours of flying for 3 days and all these things. But I did, in my gut, I knew I wanted to go. And I said to Hina, I gracefully declined. She permissioned to challenge beautifully and challenged me. And you said something that really, I mean, even just now, makes me realize like how important these choice points are. It's like you entrench a paradigm when you don't stretch yourself in those moments. And you're like, Ben, do you know what? I can really see for you that, if you really do want to come, if you want to come, is it that you make that decision and you make it work? Because I did one, and as soon as I made that decision, it was so much easier. And I felt like even coming to, like, I met Steve Hardison, I met you in person, I met some amazing people, and it allowed me to look at my life from a 10,000 foot view. And some of the things that I wanted to change were ever present, and it put in place a set of decisions that has led my life to be much much better and easier. And I think that's something that's so important. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're a business owner and you've never been on a business retreat or an expansion retreat, like Hina does them, I do them, they are so powerful. And just being around people making what I would say big decisions, but loads of little decisions that feel like a big decision. I think that's what I would term it as. Is so amazing. I remember sitting in the Arizona desert, with a cowboy hat on, just coming to some realizations. I was like, oh my gosh, my problems, my challenges seem so insignificant when I'm looking at them from this vantage point. And like you obviously articulated that. Sorry, the architect did that retreat so beautifully. Like, there was horseback riding, there was looking at the stars. It was so powerful, and just being able to look at your life with that rest. I think that there's so many people, you could see how much expansion they had personally, and it was really really powerful. So just kind of an endorsement for going on a retreat. And this is the thing. I was like, so it sounds to me, Hannah, like that one of the things that you mentioned earlier in the podcast is that you came to the decision where you wanted to decide on what you want. And part of what I'm doing with the Mile Deep podcast is that if people are listening in and they want to go and grab some like, the thing that you thought really helped you, they can go and listen to the podcast, and they can visit, and there's something that you can give them that will be really valuable for them to go and do after listening. And you said about the 51 list. Can you tell us a little bit more
Yeah.
how that has helped you and help clients? That'd be really great.
Yeah. And before I do that, I just wanted to go back to the retreat because I think that we don't realize sometimes, like you said, how significant those decisions are. Because even at the retreat, I think you made some decisions for your future self. So even the decision to come to the retreat was a decision from your next level. So there was that. And then you even had clients in Arizona, so you were able to see your clients there. And then you received clients while you're at the retreat or shortly after you come back that is very significant. Like I think you tripled or something like that. So that happens. And then because you were there, you were able to meet or be in proximity to some of my clients that are in my elite programs, like the Inner Circle. And when I was considering doing the Inner Circle again, because that had happened, whether you had conversations with them or not, but because of who you were showing up as, that's why I said, hey, do you want to do Inner Circle with me? Would you like to be a part of this? Because I think you're going to really be able to bring something so remarkable. And then next thing you know, you're in Canada and we are like, we being you and the ladies are cold plunging and I'm taking video. But all of that happened, Ben, when you made that decision from your next level, all the next level opportunities could come to you, and it's so interesting because those
Yeah.
next level opportunities came quote unquote easily. Did you
Yeah.
have to like hustle and grind for to do inner circle? No. Did you have to
Mm.
hustle and grind to like receive, I don't know, triple of what it was that you had received before? No. Your energy changed, and it's like everything else changed around it to match you to where you were.
Yeah, I
So
remember it. Yeah, it's like
I
even
have
the
to
I remember
acknowledge that.
even the yeah, I remember even the fear. I was like, it was a fear because it wasn't the financial fear. It was more the fear of leaving Dubai, leaving Poppy and the kids, and like that was the biggest fear. And it's like, how do I do this? And actually, Poppy had a great time. She 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 had the house taken care of, her meals taken care of. We got everything was prepped, but it did really, and it did open up a new paradigm for me. And I just wanted to thank you, Hina. Honestly, the way that you show up, and we did talk about the 50 wants list at the start. I think it would be valuable for anyone listening to
Yeah.
the podcast. What I'm going to do is, if you enjoyed listening to Hina talk about what she does, she's a master at a craft. There's going to be all the links to things that she's currently doing, that she's got on. There's so many opportunities to join her world and her community. I endorse every bit of everything that she does, because I've seen the transformations. Like I'm very lucky. I get to see behind the scenes, and I get to work with some very, very successful, powerful women. And it's so amazing to watch that they started in a place where they didn't have that identity, and they've worked on it tirelessly. And you can see it's like that. And it's like watching that, what we've just talked about over the last, say, 40 minutes is actually evident in these women who are doing so well with their work, their life, and their business. And they're just saying to me, like, every single week I'm hearing, oh my gosh, this is so how I don't deal with this. Like, this is how I didn't, like, even like 6 months ago, this, if I was having to deal with this months ago, this would have broken me. And they're like breezing through it.
They're
And it's
breezing
just
through it.
amazing. Yeah, it's
So I
amazing
will
to
tell
see.
you, I'll tell you quickly about the 50 want list. I can do it in a minute for you, for the listeners. Don't want to leave you hanging. Okay, 50 want list. You're going to maybe put on some music, have a cup of tea, and write down 50 things that you want that money can buy. And once you're done your 50 want list, you're going to then look at it and circle the things that you could actually start now a version of. So let's say one of the things on the list was, I would love to have some support at home in the form of a cleaning team coming in, and you'd love to have that every week. Well, maybe every week is not available to you right now, but you could do once a quarter, or you could do once a month. This will stop you from the when then, so you can start to do things, and you'll be surprised at how many things you'll circle that you can start to do now, and then start to do it.
Wow. Yeah. Hina, I could talk all day about personal transformation with you. I'm so grateful for your expertise, your wisdom, the love and the joy that I always have when I'm working alongside you. And if you've enjoyed the podcast, there's going to be a load of stuff in the school group which is attached to this podcast. Feel free to head on over there, and you can access that as well. Hina, thank you so much, and yeah, it's been a fantastic podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ben.